I wanted to start out with a story because one of the things that, like I said, I've been committed to doing this year is just sharing more authentically pieces of my own journey, really just letting people in on where I am on things and what my own growth and evolution has been, because I know that there is healing, there is medicine when we share our stories. We often make assumptions about what other people's lives are like, or how they're going through things, or that they're never going through things, that things are perfect, right? And so for most of us, like, that's just not the truth, right? We are connected to all that is. And just like nature has seasons, we have seasons, right? We have seasons where it's like, everything is blooming and bursting. And then there's seasons where it's like, ooh, we're coming into fall here. Like, it's getting quieter. Like we're getting more internal and reflective, right? We're coming into winter. It's like there's space to just, for more being, right? Maybe more quiet time and reflection. Maybe there's times where things aren't always like big and up, but they're just softer. So what I want to tell you is that, I feel like this 2022 was one of those years of more internal space than probably I've experienced in a while. And I'm looking back on it now as we're coming to the end of the year. And so I'm reflecting on that it's really been a year of discernment and I would say more refinement, meeting myself with more compassion, leaning into those places and spaces where maybe I previously would have shied away from, where maybe I just kind of would have abandoned myself and just kind of let that like edge of resistance or kind of like, that niggling like discomfort just kind of be there. But really meeting myself with courage to investigate those shadow places and bring a little bit more light into those dark corners, right? And what's interesting is that like nothing is ever new. It's always the same stuff that just kind of comes back at a different level. So I want to give us that too. But in doing that, what I found is that it's really been this beautiful opportunity to meet myself with a deeper love, right? Self-love, of which of course we all know, like translates back out to the world, right? The more love we give ourselves, the more love we have to give others. When we expand into the love, it's like, woo, like it's available. And it starts with loving ourselves first. And so I've been doing a lot more of that. And if I'm honest, when I started my business, it's like looking back, you can always see the moments, right? When I started my business and I came out of my corporate and then I was like, okay, what am I doing? Right. And it was sort of like, I had moved myself backwards, right? Like I didn't actually, like, it took a little bit for me to actually like gain the momentum and get into a place where I was like, okay, I'm earning same, now I'm earning more, working less, all those kinds of things, right? And there was a moment there where I wavered, I wondered, is this for me? Should I even do this? Like, what the heck? Like, I'm going backwards. And then there was that moment of decision of like, yes, I'm worth this. I can do this. Let's go. And there's been those types of moments along my journey as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, building 2 businesses over the course of the last 5 years. And there was a part of me over this past year that, coming out of the pandemic, that was kind of depleted. Like, my vision was a little bit more foggy, my commitment, I could feel it wavering, right? My excitement for things were just like a little, like, it's almost like the volume had been turned down and it was a little duller. And so I want to tell you this honestly, because I think it's important to know that we're not always riding the high. There are moments where like you do doubt, where you do have fears, where things come in, and like that's just normal because we're human. And I leaned into that, right? I leaned into that dark space. And what I figured out was that I was like, the way that I was running my business had worked really, really well for a long time, for like a few years, maybe 4 years. But it wasn't working for me anymore. I felt like I was like burning the midnight oil. Like there were so many different things calling my attention, right? And I was tired of ignoring the things that were calling my attention, including like my body, right? And when you're burning the midnight oil like that, for me, it felt like I was burning away the passion that I had. And so, when I reflected on that, it was like, gosh, there's like so many beautiful aspects to my life. My life is incredibly rich and abundant, and I love my life. Yet there was this like undercurrent, right? This like small thread of like feeling misaligned, feeling tired, not feeling completely happy, right? Like there's this, instead of this like strong current of passion and vibrance and pleasure and delight and purpose, right? The radiant lightness that I desired, it was like kind of like flat. And there was this part of me that was like, oh, you know, just keep pushing, just keep doing it, right? Just keep forcing it. And I didn't want to quit because, right, like the message that we all get as entrepreneurs is, oh, just keep going, right? Like I've said this message, keep going, because eventually you'll get there. But keeping going in a way that doesn't feel connected, that doesn't feel aligned, isn't really serving our highest purpose. And so what I did was like, I just kind of looked around, like I started looking around at like, what is everybody doing out there? And there was a big piece of me, I'll just speak it honestly and candidly, because that's what I do. And I think that's why you all are here and appreciate the work that I do. I felt repelled. Like I honestly felt repelled by how people were working and how they were like forcing and, you know, like how they work. They just, it was like they were like, they forced their companies, right? And even there was a time there at that beginning of the year where I even put $30,000 into an investment with a coaching program. Like that's probably the biggest coaching investment I've made. And it felt big. And what I realized in hindsight was that I was deflecting my power. Like I invested in this big, you know, high profile program and mentorship because I thought maybe it was going to help me shed light on this. Maybe it was going to give me a different way. Maybe it was going to like provide a new example. But what I found honestly was exactly the clarity that I needed, right? That there really wasn't anything different that they were offering in that model. It was pretty much exactly the same as what I was looking around at that I was repelled by. It was like a big machine. And I found the clarity that I needed really by going internally and just realizing that my own vision was to create something rich, to create something abundant, right? Full of like beauty and pleasure and something that has impact and is sensual and is like full of flow, and it has structure and it's organized and it produces results, but it can move with fluidity. And it's interesting because looking around, like there just aren't that many examples of women CEOs who are doing it in the way that I want to do it. And so I sat with that. Literally, I sat with that during this year, and I thought, you know, like, do I want to just not do this anymore? Do I want to be a mother? Do I want to just work on like projects that inspire me around my home? Do I want to like, you know, no people, no team, no clients, no launches, just me and my family, nature, my pets, like the stuff that like I get inspired to do. And that didn't really sit very well either. It's like, okay, so that's not a go. And then I had this moment where it clicked for me. It was like, you know, the light bulb went off, and I realized again that I didn't 100% believe that I could actually create what I wanted. I wasn't sure I was like fully worthy of it or deserving of it, or like, could it even be, right? I was still in that wavering space. And it's like I had the desire, but not the belief behind it. And so I'm sharing that with you honestly, because I know that you've had those moments too. And maybe you're in that moment. Maybe that's why you're here, right? And what I thought was, it's like I could see myself in this vision. And I was like standing at the edge again, right? I was like standing at the edge again. And it was like, oh, right. I'm at a moment of choice. And the wisdom that dropped in inside of that, like internal reflection was that as women, we're like the ultimate creators. We birth humans. Like, we are amazing creators. And there's so much power in that. And so to think that we can't create what we want is nonsense. It has no truth to it. We know how to create. And so the wisdom that dropped in was that we can actually create anything that we desire, right? We can be anything that we desire. We can feel the way that we want to feel. We get to create that. And so again, the wisdom is that it's so simple that's actually where the power is. It's just choosing to do that, realizing that we are that powerful. And inside of that, like, I just reflected back on various moments in my life where I've had this realization before and then moved through it, right? Even when I birthed my babies, right? The common belief is that has to be a struggle. It's hard, it's painful, it's physically painful, right? That's the belief that's out there. That's the wisdom that's taught. But I didn't want to have that experience. I remember specifically deciding that I wasn't going to have that experience. And I figured out tools for myself. And I took a course on hypnosis that I took for 6 weeks, and then I practiced for another 6 weeks. So I invested, 3 months of time before the birth of my first child on a technique of how to, with the drop of a finger, imagine that I had anesthesia from my neck, all the way down to my mid thighs. And I reprogrammed the wording choice. I thought about the contractions as pressure waves that were moving through my body. It was like somebody was giving me a big hug. And literally that's what I experienced. And I had a pain-free birth experience 2 times with no drugs. So I'm not saying that to whatever your birth experience is. If you've had a birth experience, it's completely valid and beautiful and exactly what you were supposed to have. I'm not claiming superiority. What I'm wanting to express here is that that's the power. The power is in making the decision, and then your body, your mind, everything can get on board to create that for you. And so it's no different. I could apply the same thing into my business, right? You can take that same concept and apply it into your business, right? You don't have to do things the way that everybody else does them. So here I am in this moment that I can do things differently, right? I don't have to build a business with a force or a push or a strain, but we can do it with flow. And so I want to invite us all into that, right? And around this time of all of these realizations, I made a commitment to myself to be my best client. And I've shared this with some of you individually. But this was a decision that I made. I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna really practice this, and I'm gonna be my best client. I'm gonna choose again, like I've done all these moments before in building my life and my career, to design it on my own terms, to believe that I can create something where, and really step into this wildly worthy energy, right? And so what to me that meant was immersing myself, right? Owning this rich, juicy, prosperous life that I have, being present for it. And so I could be, to me, it was I had to make a decision to be in devotion to my well-being above all the other things, right? Devotion to my own internal abundance above all the other things. Knowing that from that, I was going to be in this state of overflow and then could then pour into others. And so just deciding to cultivate that deliberately, that I could prioritize my energy above results. I could prioritize my passion. I could prioritize my creativity over high-speed growth, right? And to me, the pacing has felt so good, and it's felt so much better and so much richer. And I've found that I could actually move slower, or I could do less things in a week, and that it suited me, right? There's way less hustle and more flow. And yet there's something about when you operate from this spaciousness that it's like jet fuel to the soul, right? It's like somehow things can grow with less effort. And right, it's because we're committed to our mission, right? Not like a margin, or we're committed to honoring our personal commitments, having higher standards, clearer boundaries, listening to our bodies, like really showing up to serve with all of our presence. And so I'm continuously playing with this new edge, right? I'm playing with this. And to me, this is the energy of wildly worthy, right? This is knowing that we deserve to have it all, that whatever that means for us, that we get to be in charge of that definition. And so with that, I want to just remind us that like we get to invent the way that we want to lead, right? And for you, it may not look the same way as it looks for me. And that doesn't matter. What matters is that you step into your power and receive your magic, right? Like own it and claim it. And knowing that like all the aspects of our lives are intertwined. So we can actually bring our whole selves, right? And we can honor our whole selves in the things that we get to create. And it starts with believing we are worthy, that we are worthy of that much abundance, of that much pleasure, of that much joy, that much prosperity, that much money, like that much rich passion, that much spaciousness with our time, that much fun, that much contribution, that much purpose, like all of this stuff.